What is wisdom? When we are wise, do we actually achieve anything? Are we superior to the next guy because we understand the world better? What is our reward for gaining knowledge and understanding? Well, there was a man who answered all these questions. And not just a man, but a king. And not just a king, but one of the wisest men who ever lived. And his name was Solomon. And he wrote a very interesting book called Ecclesiastes, found in the Bible. Now, this book actually answers these questions, but before we get into that, he actually prefaces the book with some profound observations about the world. And the reason he does that is it helps his conclusions make sense to the audience. So before we answer those specific questions, let's survey his reflections. And we're going to start in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. He says, "One generation passes away, and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose. The wind goes toward the south, and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually, and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it." Solomon is noticing that the world is defective. He seems to be describing it like it's a broken record, like it's on repeat, on a loop. The sun, the wind, the rivers, they all travel around the world continually, without stopping. They never end. It just keeps on and on. Even mankind continues in repetitive cycles of things we do. The passions of our heart that we pursue continually, and yet it never goes away. And then our children will pursue the same things we have. And then their children will pursue the same passions. And when our pursuit ends at the end of our life, our children carry that on in a never-ending cycle. We see this same exact flow intermingled in everything that we do, whether it be mowing the grass, washing dishes, doing laundry. See, you go and look, the grass needs to be mowed. You cut it. You're happy for a moment. 2 weeks later, it's grown back up. And you see it, and it's displeasing to the eyes. So what do we have to do? Repeat the cycle. Same with washing dishes. You clean the dish, you put it in the cupboard, you take it out of the cupboard, you dirty the dish, you put it back in the wash, back in the cupboard, and back out. And it goes on like that forever until we perish. Everything we do is on repeat, and it doesn't seem to create anything that is lasting. Solomon says in Ecclesiastes chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, "Vanity of vanities, says the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What does a man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun?" Everything is undone the moment we do it. That's the nature of this world that devours. As soon as you finish stacking your last block, life seems to knock it down again. Now we see that something about life is cruel. Is there a way to outsmart to get around this impasse? Well, listen to what Solomon says next. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, it says, "So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness." So picture wisdom and folly as two different sea vessels on a dark and foggy sea. One of the ships has the spyglass and is able to notice a trail of beacons placed out to guide the ships away from the storms and to keep them in calm waters. The other ship, however, without sight, would set out on its own, the captain trusting his gut, and becomes mastered by the heavy winds of the sea. Wisdom and folly could also be laid out and described as someone handing you a treasure map, where they have already been through life. They've seen the pitfalls. They've seen the places where you could have success. And they wrote it all out for you and handed it to you. And they said, if you follow this, you will be sure to have a smooth ride through life. And then you open it up and you see that the paths are laid out, revealing all of the prudent steps, and the other side laying out all the pitfalls to avoid. This map, given to you by one who has already took the journey, like your parents, instead of partying, chasing money, and pursuing promiscuous women, you are encouraged to work hard, save money, and raise a family. Sounds great, right? Well, there's a problem with this, and Solomon points that out. So let's read it. This is in Ecclesiastes chapter 2 as well. "The wise man's eyes are in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I myself perceived that the same event happens to them all. So I said in my heart, as it happens to the fool, it also happens to me. And why was I then more wise? Then I said in my heart, this also is vanity. For there is no more remembrance of the wise than of the fool forever, since all that now is will be forgotten in the days to come. And how does a wise man die? As the fool." So this map is meant to get you to a greater destination. It's meant to lead you to treasure. And the beacons that were laid out for these ships was meant to bring them out of the darkness and to safety. However, as Solomon points out, the rocks are unavoidable. So what is the reward for all your hard work, your wisdom, and your knowledge? Same as the one who lacks wisdom. So what was the point? Why is that called wisdom? Well, there's a distinction being made here. There's two different types of wisdom. There is a false wisdom, and then there's a true wisdom. There is a worldly wisdom and a godly wisdom. Well, then the question is, what is true wisdom? And as you can see on this map, worldly wisdom isn't necessarily a bad thing. Good things happen when you follow these ways. However, in the end, it doesn't really bring anything of substance to you. So what is the other option? How are we to gain this true understanding? Well, in order to understand God's wisdom, we have to know His ways. And how do we do this? Well, you go and read His Word. See, in the same way that our parents knew where to go based on what they experienced, the same with God. God created all things. He created the two paths. He has allowed for death and the grave and darkness to rule over us, and he knows the way out of all of that. That's where godly wisdom comes in. So knowing that we seek out what God says is true wisdom, so let's see what he has to say about worldly wisdom. We read this in Isaiah chapter 24. He says, "And it shall be as with the people, so with the priest, as with the servant, so with his master, as with the maid, so with her mistress, as with the buyer, so with the seller, as with the lender, so with the borrower, as with the creditor, so with the debtor. The land shall be entirely emptied and utterly plundered, for the Lord has spoken this word. The earth mourns and fades away. The world languishes and fades away. The haughty people of the earth languish. The earth is also defiled under its inhabitants, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore the curse has devoured the earth, and those who dwell in it are desolate." The earth is cursed? Is this what Solomon identified? That we're in this loop, that all of our works culminate in death? Why is this? Well, let's look back at this passage. He said, because they have transgressed the laws. God has put us in these chains that we cannot overcome because of our sins. See, we have perpetual evil that is confined deep within us. This is why we need a severe course correction. See, this is why God has afflicted us, to take us off of our destructive path, so that we will turn back to him and come to him for life and salvation. God says in Malachi chapter 1, "They may build, but I will tear down, and they will be called the wicked country, and the people with whom the Lord is angry forever." And then in Deuteronomy chapter 28 it says, "And among those nations you shall find no rest, nor shall the sole of your foot have a resting place. But there the Lord will give you a trembling heart, failing eyes, and anguish of soul. Your life shall hang in doubt before you. You shall fear day and night, and have no assurance of life." See, this is why the earth doesn't sustain us. This is why the earth doesn't satisfy our souls. God has done away with the satisfaction that the earth can give us, because it's not the earth we need to be putting our trust and faith in. What then is godly wisdom? Well, godly wisdom is the wisdom that will truly sustain your life. It will truly satisfy your soul. Godly wisdom leads to the true treasure, eternal life with him, and an inheritance for those who believe and have faith in him, and a resurrection back from the dead. True wisdom brings us past the grave, back into the arms of our Maker. See, God first laid the curse on us at the very beginning, back in Genesis. Genesis chapter 3 says, "Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field by the sweat of your face. You shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return." But here's the good news. He has offered redemption from this. Yes, we've turned away from him. We've chosen death over life. But he says there is a way back. Let's read Isaiah chapter 55. It says, "Come everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. Why do you spend your money for that which is not bread, and your labor for that which does not satisfy? Listen diligently to me, and eat what is good, and delight yourselves in rich food. Incline your ear and come to me. Hear that your soul may live. And I will make with you an everlasting covenant. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts. Let him return to the Lord, that he may have compassion on him, and to our God, for he will abundantly pardon. For you shall go out in joy, and be led forth in peace. The mountains and the hills before you shall break forth into singing, and all the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Instead of the thorn shall come up the cypress, instead of the briar shall come up the myrtle, and it shall make a name for the Lord, an everlasting sign that shall not be cut off. See, now God has made this path possible by the payment that Christ took upon himself that we actually deserved. See, the wages of sin is death. We chose sin. That would eventually lead to our demise. However, Christ came and he lived a perfect life, and he was a sinless sacrifice and payment that was acceptable to God, and he took it in our place. And see, when Christ died on the cross, he simultaneously showed us what true justice and wrath looks like. However, at the same time, he showed true love and mercy because of the suffering that he was willing to endure for us, that we may be redeemed. And this offer goes out to all men. I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since, in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men.